Backwards compatibility is one of my favourite features in video game consoles. The ability to take your favourite games from the previous generation forward with you to the next generation without having multiple consoles plugged in made the feature very valuable to me. The PlayStation 3 is a console that has one of the most confusing implementations of backwards compatibility, but also one of the largest console games libraries as a result, with just over 10,000 games playable, making it one of my favourite games consoles as a result. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the PlayStation 3's backwards compatibility. Let's start with the features that are available on all PlayStation 3s. All PS3s can play your PS1 discs. This means that all PS3 Fat, Slim and Super Slim PS3s can play the vast majority of your PlayStation 1 games library. For PS2 games, only the Catch A, Catch B, Catch C and Catch E PS3 Fat models can play your PlayStation 2 games. You can identify a PS3 model via the white sticker on the back of the console. Whilst the overwhelming majority of PS3 games are region free, PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility with disc games is region locked. This means you cannot play NTSC PS1 or PS2 games on a PAL PS3 and vice versa. If you want to play PS1 or PS2 games from a different region on your PS3, you can download PS1 or PS2 classics from the PlayStation Store from another region, so long as you have a PSN account from that region. In other words, if you're in the UK and want a North American PS1 or PS2 game, you will need to make a US PlayStation Network account to purchase the game. The PS3 can upscale and smooth edges to reduce the amount of aliasing, improving the image quality of your PS1 and PS2 games. It can also stretch the image of some games, or you can disable all scaling features and play it in the native 4:3 aspect ratio. I prefer this option as some games like Jak and Daxter lose some of the top of the image, making platforming a bit more difficult, but I'll keep smoothing on to reduce the amount of aliasing on PS2 games any day. If your PS3 does not support PS2 backwards compatibility, these options will be replaced with just PS Upscaler and PS Smoothing instead. Whilst the PS3 can upscale your PS1 and PS2 games, all PS2 games run at their native resolution, which is likely 480i for most PlayStation 2 games. PS1 titles, on the other hand, are forced into 480i, as the PS3 cannot do 240p, which is the native resolution of most PlayStation 1 titles. Unfortunately, this means for PlayStation 1 titles there will be slightly higher input latency, and there is a chance you may run into combing artifacts due to the interlaced resolution. If you're using a HDMI cable on your PS3, you can gain access to some additional video options for some titles, such as the ability to play in progressive scan mode, producing a sharper image at 480p. Some games like Gran Turismo 4 even support 1080i, should you prefer that option. For PAL regions, HDMI will allow you access to the PAL 60 mode for PAL games that support it. This is where a PAL game runs at 60Hz and a higher frame rate, much like its NTSC counterpart, instead of 50Hz. 4-player multiplayer support is also supported. You can connect any combination of 6-axis or DualShock 3 controllers, with the latter's rumble functionality also working. If you're wanting to play 4-player split screen on PlayStation 1 titles, you will need to set your PS3 controllers to 1A, 1B, 1C and 1D manually, otherwise players 3 and 4 won't be detected. For PlayStation 2 titles, you do not need to do any changes, and you can connect your controllers as you would normally, and it will all work perfectly. Special thanks to my family for helping me get the footage you've been watching. You can also still play online multiplayer for some of the remaining PlayStation 2 titles that still have this functionality, or PlayStation 2 games that have been brought back online by the fans. Want to use your original PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 save data? With the use of memory card adapters, you can connect your original PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 memory card to your PS3, and then you can copy your entire memory card to your PlayStation 3's hard drive, allowing you to pick up where you left off on your PS1 or PS2 save games. This is great if you have a big back catalogue of games that you never got time to finish back in the day, and now you want to continue with save games on your PS3. So those are the features that all PS3s have access to via backwards compatibility. So let's now take a look at some of the differences between PS1 and PS2 backwards compatibility on the PlayStation 3. PS1 backwards compatibility is all achieved via software emulation. This means that there is no physical PlayStation 1 hardware inside the PS3, and compatibility seems to be similar to the late generation PlayStation 2s, which also only use software emulation for PlayStation 1 games. Whilst the emulator on the whole is very good, there are a handful of titles that do have some issues, such as Speed Punks, or Speed Freaks as it's known in Power Regions, which does not progress after the first race. Despite this, the overwhelming majority of PlayStation 1 games will play with little to no issues on all PlayStation 3s. PS1 Classics, which are PlayStation 1 games that you can download from the PlayStation Store, use a slightly different version of the PS1 emulator. I didn't really notice any difference between this version and a disc-based emulator, so it's up to you whether you go the disc-based or digital route with your collection. PS2 backwards compatibility, on the other hand, comes in 3 variations. The original 60GB and 20GB, the Catch A and Catch B respectively, had full PlayStation 2 hardware inside them. They contain the PS2 CPU, known as the Emotion Engine, the PlayStation 2 GPU, known as the graphic synthesizer, and the PS2 RAM bus memory inside the PlayStation 3, giving it almost 98% backwards compatibility. Games will play near enough identical to the PlayStation 2 on these models, as they pretty much have a PS2 inside them. There are a handful of games like Crash Twinsanity which do not perform correctly, and some games are unplayable due to there being no way to connect specific controllers to the PS3, but for PS2 backwards compatibility, these 2 models have the highest compatibility rating. The Catch A and Catch B models would only be released in North America and Japan, with power regions like Europe missing out on full PlayStation 2 hardware support. The second form of PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility is the hybrid of hardware and software emulation found in the Catch C and Catch E models. These models remove the PlayStation 2 CPU and RAM bus memory, emulating their functionality instead, but they keep the PlayStation 2 GPU to help boost compatibility. Most games will play without issue on these models, but some titles may have minor issues, whilst others may be unplayable due to abysmal performance. From my old Power collection, 26 games in total, the stack on the left I consider to be unplayable, the stack in the middle I consider to be playable with no noticeable issues at all, whilst the pile on the right are playable, but there may be some minor glitches. When my collection is split like this, 15% of the games are unplayable, 62% are considered playable without any issues, whilst 23% are considered playable but with minor issues. If you can ignore minor issues with the games such as the occasional glitch or slight frame rate drop under specific conditions, then the percentage of playable titles would increase to around 85% on the Catch C and Catch E models. Curiously though, these models have the ability to upscale PlayStation 2 games that are running a 480p progressive scan on the PlayStation 3, something that the full hardware Catch A and Catch B models are unable to do. For power regions, the Catch C model is the only PS3 that supports PS2 backwards compatibility, whilst the Catch E 80GB model would only be released in North America, Southeast Asia, Mexico and Brazil. It's important to note that visually speaking, the Catch A, Catch C and Catch E models all look identical, whilst the Catch B model lacks a chrome trim and instead has a black finish. The Catch B model also lacks card reader support and Wi-Fi, so please keep this in mind and be sure to check the model number beforehand if you're looking to add one of these PlayStation 3s to your collection. Ultimately, Sony would remove PlayStation 2 hardware backwards compatibility from later PS3 models, leaving PS1 backwards compatibility as the only option. It's worth mentioning that all PS3s that have PS2 disc-based backwards compatibility are still backwards compatible. There was a rumour saying Sony had patched out backwards compatibility in these models, but this is false. Finally, like PlayStation 1 Classics, you can download PS2 games from the PlayStation Store. These games are all run entirely under software emulation, and they play surprisingly well. The performance seems to be on par with the Catch C and Catch E models. So that's backwards compatibility on the PlayStation 3, but we're not done yet. Here's a few extra things you may not have known and may find interesting. If you have a modded PlayStation 3 with custom firmware installed, you can rip your copies of your PlayStation 2 games and play them on PS3s that don't officially support PS2 games. This is all possible thanks to the use of the PS2 Classic software emulator, and compatibility and performance is surprisingly good, even for games that aren't officially supported. If you have a modded PS3, it may be worth checking this one out. And finally, it appears at some point Sony was experimenting with making a software emulator for PlayStation 3s that don't have PlayStation 2 hardware. Before I go on, I do not recommend trying this, as you can get your PlayStation 3 stuck in factory service mode. With that said, if you put your PS3 into factory service mode on certain firmwares on the specific PlayStation 3 models, the PS3 will try to boot PlayStation 2 disc games showing this image. Unfortunately though, none of my PlayStation 2 games that I own worked on my 40GB PS3, but there is footage of someone playing God of War through this experimental emulator on YouTube. Given the low compatibility, it looks like this was dropped early on, which is a shame as it would have been nice to have all PS3s play PlayStation 2 titles to some degree. And there you have it, everything you need to know about the PlayStation 3's backwards compatibility. What do you think about backwards compatibility? Do you still play your classic games on a newer console? Let me know down in the comments section below. But that's all from me. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more, and consider following me on Twitch. Thanks again, and I'll see you all in the next video.